To the reflux section, we go ahead and do now is we go ahead and solder a coupling onto the end of it, a 3-inch coupling, and so this will have to be sanded just like the other end. The inside of this sanded, fluxed, and soldered. That's it for now. Later, when the condenser section is added on the end of it, then we'll put in the marbles and the screen. This pipe here we've already prepped just the same way we did the others. It was 3 1/4 inches long, and we cut back into it a 1/4 inch, splayed it out. This is the reducer that we marked earlier. You got the 2 holes for the coil to come through 90 degrees apart, and then 45 degrees over you've got your hole for the 1/2 inch tubing to go through. I'm going to drill a pilot hole through here first. Same procedures before with drilling in these. Always make sure you're perpendicular to this plane. This is a 7/8 bit. We marked the 5/8 step on this, and whenever that goes into the copper, that's your right depth. Alright, the outside has been penetrated by the 5/8 drill. There's a little bit of a lip on the inside there, and because the thickness of this material is larger than the step, if I go in any deeper, then I'm going to make a larger outside or larger diameter hole on the outside. I really don't want that, so I'm just going to pry this on through there, knock that little bit of material on through. You could have used a file, rasp it out. Then I drill these holes in the same manner as on the reflux section, except that these will be done with a 5/16 diameter drill. The exact same procedure. Took a 9-inch piece of 1.5-inch diameter tube, and I've taken the cutting burr off both ends, and then I resurfaced it back, connection of a 1.5-inch to 1/2-inch coupling. And I'm going to go ahead and flux this up and then solder that connection. Okay, and next you solder this. Clamp it in the vise now. Next you have to drill a row of 1/2-inch holes all the way around the diameter of this. So, and they need to be just below that cap. I'm going to run a 1/4-inch drill through there. I'm going to try to keep my drill going straight through. This would be a good application for drill press. Next I use I run a 1/2-inch drill through there. Now I'll rotate this 90 degrees. If you bring it up in clamp far enough and line the top of the hole on each side with the surface of the vise, then you know you're exactly 90 degrees off if you hit the top center of this. It's internal, so you have them roughly correct, because there just is enough room to get all the holes through there without them overlapping. There's a 1/2 inch again. And I'll rotate it 45 degrees. I'm going to drill my 1/4-inch guide hole through there. Now you can actually look down through these 1/2-inch holes and line your drill bit up between the 2 holes on the back side. This is what it should look like when you're done. You should have an even gap between each hole. Mine aren't exactly even, but they're good enough for an internal part where you're not going to see it and it's not going to affect the function. The next thing we have to do is solder this 1/2-inch pipe into the bell. This has already been prepped, and I prepped the inside of that, so I'm going to add a little bit of flux to that. I'm going to dab it all over on the inside because it's going to be puddled on the inside over the tabs, or up to the tabs. Since I'm putting that one through from the back side and it's a little harder, we'll make sure that the hole will accommodate the tubing. Get in there, shove it home. That bottomed out real nice, but if it doesn't, you can use that pipe again. Tap down on it, get it down nice and flat. And then on this, you want to get to where that surface is level again, so your solder don't run off in either direction. I'm getting ready to solder that alcohol outlet now, and what I wanted to point out is just, I apply the heat to the outside on it also, and basically I do it like this anytime I can. Put the heat on the outside and apply the solder from the inside. Makes for a lot less cleanup work. If you try to solder from the outside, you don't know how much you're getting in there around your tabs, and you also have a lot more mess on the outside to clean up. Alright, it's flowed all the way around. Alright, next thing we have to do on these bells for the top is on the inside here you have a ridge that keeps the pipe from going through, and we need the pipe to go through, so that ridge has to go. So what I'm going to do is get it clamped here, and I'll go in there and grind that off. Alright, I've completed grinding out. I've taken this piece and I measured up 7 inches from this end to here. I put a mark there. This is how far through I'm going to go. This part's still a little hot to handle, but when this is going to be going through there, and it'll be going in that deep. So what I'm going to do, and keep everything on the vise there, is put that in position and put me a couple of marks, ouch, where this part here will line up with that, because this is the area that I have to prep for soldering. So it's going to be soldered in there. Apply flux here. Next thing I'm going to do is flux inside of here, and this is where we find out how well I cleaned that ridge off on the inside, because sometimes you really have to hammer this on hard. What I usually do, I've got my block of wood here, and I'll bang it down like that, get it through. There, it went through. Now I'm going to bring it up to where the top edge of this is even with that mark. That's about where it needs to be. I could solder this from the outside, but there again, anytime I can solder from the inside, I do. So I'll be applying heat down here and putting the solder down through here, and I'll be filling in the gap all the way around the 1.5-inch pipe. And hopefully I won't have too much run out down here that'll have to be cleaned off. So doing the soldering will be the next step here. And it's all ready to go. But right out here is where I apply the heat. And then I'll just put solder in there all the way around the 1.5-inch pipe. Continuing here with the assembly of the condenser section. We've already got the reducing coupling soldered to the 9-inch pipe, the cap on it, the 1/2-inch outlet. And the next step is to make sure you prep the inside with the 3-inch coupling. You need to do that before you solder the coil in, or you won't be able to get in there to do it. Next, I'm going to prep the tubing where sometimes it goes in pretty easy. I like to have the inlet on the left side of the still as you're facing the front. The holes are on the back on this particular piece. So it should be in there like that is how it's going to go. Like they're both coming through pretty easy, which is kind of uncommon, but I'll take it. Now I'm going to have to get this rotated over the top of that cap before I go in any further, which there I just got that done. This one's literally falling in. It's great. Now we need to have a measurement from here to the top here of 16 inches. Looks like I've got about 16.5 right now, counting that part sticking out, so I'm going to drive it down a little further there. The coil is actually coming around the cap here. That's not a problem at all. Help hold it in center. Okay, that's right about where it goes. And to finish this piece up, I'll be soldering the tubing. Again, I'll be soldering it on the inside and applying heat to the outside. Alright, I've soldered both tubings into place. On the back side, had a little bit of run out there, nothing bad, doesn't look bad at all. And it's still hot, so I'm forced to use the vise here, where all I'm going to be doing is cutting those tubes off next, just so I can go ahead and get them out of the way of any future assembly work. Well, I'm going to measure out 1.25 inches. Since it's kind of ambiguous about where you're measuring from on these, you know, if they don't come, you know, if you wind up having them one longer than the other, it's best to just cut them to where they're the same length, you know, for cosmetic purposes. Alright, the only thing left to do on the condenser section is apply flux to the back side of the coupling there. And I've already prepped the end of the 16-inch pipe. We've soldered a cap on the end of a 16-inch pipe. So it's just a matter of sliding that down over it, making sure you're all the way in. One thing you want to make sure before you do it, sometimes the tubing will be tight up against the inside. I would get in there with a flat blade screwdriver or something. Be careful not to crimp the tubing and push it away from the wall, because, you know, this is a pretty sharp edge. It could score through the tubing if it was bound in there tight enough. And that'll be it for the condenser section. This is a alignment tool we use for putting all three components together with. It's comprised of two 2x4x8 pieces of lumber screwed down to the table, and they're spaced from outside to outside is 9.5 inches. I have two 2x4x9.5 inch blocks, well, 2 on each end, and a screw ran in dead center there. That would be 4 3/4 inches in from either end, and a string drawn down the middle to good alignment. I'll bring that up tight on that end, and you've got the center of your adapter here that you can line up with, and you've also got your top dead center mark on the reducing cap that we put on there when we were setting it up with the angle gauge. We've already sanded and fluxed these pieces here. This, you know, this is of course the reflux section. I'm going to be placing the condenser on it. The reason I put this end up against the block, that's the coupling. I really don't want to be beating on the end of that coupling, because if it bends it in any, then we'd have a hard time getting the doubler on. Okay, we've got the mark here from where it was the back side of the center of the tubes that we did when we were in the angle gauge. And so you line it up, keep everything good and lined up that way. It tried to turn on me there while I moved it in, and if it'll slide in by hand, then that's just great. There's going to be times when you have to beat it on. I use a dead blow hammer I have here. It's a plastic face, but it does provide a good solid hit. That's it. It's all the way on, and everything's lined up really well. All right, there I've got the condenser and reflux section together. Now, slide down. All right, after putting the condenser and reflux section together, the next step is to put the marbles in. First you want to put a 3/4 plug in your regulator outlet, I guess it's called. And then be dumping marbles in. These particular marbles here don't have any shooters in them, so I'm going to just dump them in straight out of the bag. And I always look down in there, and if the coil's not center, I'll take a hammer handle or something and stick that in there just to help try to keep it center until you get enough marbles in there to hold it in place. A few bags will probably be in place pretty good. But you fill it up to where you from the center of this coupling down 6 inches is where you want the top of the marbles to be. So the next step is to put a screen in. We've got these pre-cut and they're a good snug fit. You have to drive them in, and after they get in there, once you drive them in place, they're not going anywhere. I used the 1-inch pipe to hammer these in, and that one was a well-made screen that it went right in. We cut them and then with a torch and grind them down to where they fit snugly in, but they don't fall in. That's what it should look like. Now we can continue with putting this together. Make sure my marks are all lined up. And then the last thing to do is to put the doubler on. You want to make sure your 3/4 adapter pipes both come out the left side of the still. There's no alignment marks that's been placed on this doubler. I haven't really figured out a good way of doing that yet, but you can pretty well see whether this pipe is sticking straight out or not. And if you made your doubler correct, if this one's coming straight out the side, then this one's going to be going up the center of that side. So you just need to make them where they're both straight out. And this here should be, your 1/2-inch pipe should be in a position where it's going to run right up that side. And just from looking at it, I think I need to turn it just a little more. And I don't think we're going to get much better than that. I'm going to tap it in place now with my dead blow hammer. And that will secure the screen. Soldering these two fittings up, and then we can solder our 1/2-inch pipe on the outside. Alright, I've just completed this solder joint here, and while it's still warm, it isn't required, but I like to do it when this is still hot because you're going to be heating that area anyway. But we're going to install this drain pipe. First thing I'm going to do is prep everything for solder. I use the angle grinder with the pad on it to get that region, and also the back side of the drain pipe. Alright, I've just returned from the belt sander and I've cleaned the end of the drain pipe, got ready for flux. See, the flux is just steaming. I run this through a clamp. Now you can see that this is wanting to lay way off to the side. I have the still laying where the alcohol outlet's straight up and the gauge outlet is straight off to the side. So this here should be over here and turned where the pipe adapter's sticking straight upwards. So I've got it there now. Alright, I've placed a hose clamp, 4-inch clamp under this to hold it down straight and tight where I want it. It's a difficult place to solder because you've got to get the 3-inch hot enough to take solder, and be careful not to get the 1/2-inch so hot that it won't take solder. So I'm directing the flame probably 3/4 of an inch to an inch away from the 1/2-inch pipe, and I'm banking on the heat bouncing off the. Alright, it is. I'm already getting some melt right in here inside this 1/2-inch. But my solder that's already on a 3-inch, it hadn't started melting yet. So I'm going to try to keep from getting too much more heat on that. There, I'm starting to get some solder down there starting to melt. So So now I'm going to go ahead and start applying some solder here. I got both of them close to the right temperature, I hope. Now the 3-inch, there's so much mass of the 3-inch here, it's going to keep drawing heat away from the point I'm working on here. I'm probably going to have to keep some heat on the 3-inch. Then I'll come up and hit the 1/2 inch whenever I feel like